Hey, this is StarCraft 2 History, and this time I'm going to be talking about Zest. And with me is a journalist in the real world. His name is Olli, and when he's not a journalist, he is on Reddit flaming people for being bad, and they should feel bad because they are bad. And if he's not doing that, he's somewhere on Team Liquid. So, besides doing all of that, he's also Heroes number one or number two fanboy, and he is definitely Zest's number one fanboy for sure. So this one is going to be about Zest, one of the all-time great Protosses. And I guess I'll start with the beginning. That's a good place to start. This guy was a Brood War player, originally named Wookie or P7 Gabe, which is like covered in blood. Pretty metal sort of name. Was on Eastro, then went to Weedmade Fox, then eventually joined KT. And he was like an okay Pro League player as far as I could tell. He wasn't like he wasn't one of those guys like Zest, like Sulky, Rain, or Innovation or MVP, like one of those guys people thought was on the way up in Brood War. And so the StarCraft two transfer was probably the most surprising was his like dominance, I guess, when he comes into 2015, right? And I think that's or 2014. And I guess that's where we'll start is 2014. So, do you remember how it all begins, Ollie?
Uh, yes. Basically, what you said about Pro League is correct. Where he was, he was always a starting lineup player. It was Zest, Stats, Flash, and then
One of TY or somebody else.
yeah, the TY after the very first
Maybe,
season. I think he
might
was
have been one of
taken
those
off
like
the field.
random ass KT Zergs.
Yeah, yeah. But whenever somebody would rotate out of that lineup, it would be Zest usually,
Mm-hmm.
because Stats, Flash, and whoever else was, and TY, it was usually TY, I think.
Yeah.
They were very solid, and Zest was just kind of on the. He was a good player, but he was never that level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and really, it all starts when
In Pro League when he all
in,
kills,
in
right?
yeah, in the Pro League finals when KT faced a super strong SKT lineup
Mm-hmm.
with uh Sulky, Sue, Parting, and Rain,
Yeah.
and even Classic was on that team, and he didn't even play. So they were extremely stacked. And Zest went out first against Sulky, I believe, and just kind of steamrolled the whole lineup of SK. Nobody expected it because Zest had shown nothing previously that would lead anybody to believe that he was capable of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly he was just at that level out of
Uh,
nowhere.
yeah. Out of nowhere is the correct assumption because like yeah, with Sue, at least you knew he got to that GSL final, so you knew okay, there's something there. With a few of the other players, there's like some kind of run or some kind of like qualifier run at least, where you see him, and then you see them play, you're like, okay, this guy's good. With Zest, it was literally one day I'm going to be fielded into Pro League, and then I'm going to all kill the best team in the world, and that's where he starts, and he basically becomes a plague for SKT for the rest of time, basically until SKT drop out of StarCraft two. Basically, like I've never like SKT had always had this one sided kind of relationship with KT, but then like kind of reversed with Flash and then later with Zest, and Zest like really fucking took it to him. And so people were I won't say hyped because I don't know exactly what the sentiment was for his first Code S run, but he was definitely a guy I was looking out for. Is like, okay, this guy is the real deal. Because if you can all kill SKT, there's definitely something about you, right? And let's see here. In basically in round 32 gets Trap, Leenock, Supernova, and I believe he beats Leenock and Trap. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Goes on to Group B. Actually has a very hard group here. In my opinion, like the Group of Death, arguably the
Yeah,
Group of
yeah,
Death in that season. Though
yeah,
Group C is pretty fucking close too, to be honest. It's Maru,
yeah.
Zest, Deer, and Sulky. And at this point, Deer was the double royal rotor and uh, straight up considered the best Protoss in the world. Sulky was the best Zerg from 2013. Maru was the best Terran in Korea from 2013. And then there was Zest, this new guy. And Zest loses to Maru. No shame in that, because Maru would be Zest's bane for his entire career, in a way, right?
Yeah.
And then Zest makes it through against Sulky and Deer. Do you remember these games?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I was really, really excited for that group when it happened because at the time that was the group that um, I don't think there's an argument to be made for Group C, even though it was very, very good. I
The only
didn't
argument for Group
see,
C is like retroactively because nobody knew how good
yeah,
Classic was going to be.
yeah, and Squirtle just wasn't at that level. Even
Parting
though
still
good in,
swears. Parting still swears Squirtle was at that level. But okay, yeah.
yeah, but not that level.
Hmm.
Um, to me, that group was, I considered Sulky the best Zerg in the world at that time, still, even though Sue had gotten to the Goddess finals.
Yeah.
And uh, that was probably the season where Sue really established himself as the number one Zerg. But
Hmm.
at that point in the tournament, I still thought Sulky was number one.
Yeah. Okay.
And even though Deer was sort of on the was starting to decline, he was still probably the top Protoss.
Hmm.
It was either him or Rain,
Yeah.
maybe
It's
Parting.
Parting is always iffy. It's like because he always has the best micro, but not much
Yeah,
else relative to the other Protosses.
yeah. Uh, and the thing was, the way uh, the way Zest beat these players in the Pro League finals wasn't just that he cheesed them out or anything. He just legitimately outplayed them in macro games.
Hmm.
He had extremely good PvP against Rain and against Parting.
Yeah.
And then against Sulky and Sue, he just played
Really solid.
perfect, standard, competent PvC.
Yeah.
Um, but this was the first time since, I mean, after the Pro League finals where we got to see his PvT in action.
Hmm.
And it was against the
Mario.
best Terran in the world by far.
Yeah.
And Maru was sort of the first to show the weaknesses that Zest had,
Hmm.
where Zest often struggled with that extremely multitasking heavy playstyle that Maru was the best player at.
Yep.
Everything else, though, Zest looked extremely strong.
Hmm.
And I think that was when he started to become a Codes contender for many people. And
Hmm.
the next two matches, quarterfinals and semifinals, showed that even further.
Yeah. So basically, if you want to put Zest in a box, so to speak, if we're talking about his skills relative to the rest of the great Protosses, so I'm thinking Rain, Parting, Classic, CJ Hero, even Old School Hero if you want to throw him in there, MC, like Huck, 91, any of these guys basically. What puts Zest above all of them, including SOS, is I think he's actually smarter than all of them.
Yep,
And
I
I
agree.
yeah, basically if you're just talking about pure game decision making, he is arguably the best Protoss we have ever seen and will likely ever see. And this is an interesting case because I think a bunch of the other Protosses all have better tools than Zest does. Right? They have like skills that Zest cannot have. Like Parting is better micro, or so is Hero. Rain I think is actually better in terms of build and build execution. Like and then there's like a bunch of miniature things. It's like iffy with Rain, right? But I
Yeah,
can definitely make an argument for that at least.
yeah.
And
I think
certainly the case when we get into Rain's 2015. Right.
yeah, definitely. I think Rain was also. I think Rain was like half obsessed in a way where he was probably better at the defensive macro side of things,
Mm-hmm.
whereas Zest was the complete package in
Yeah.
terms of game management.
Yeah. Basically,
Like
like
everything he
Zest
felt.
reached that level of state that Rain didn't reach until 2015. And even then, I think like Rain's 2015 is still weaker than Zest's 2014. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Because
Yeah, yeah.
like if
By
I had to
far.
guess, it's like basically like Rain didn't learn the lessons that MVP was trying to teach him in that GSL semifinals, right?
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, Zest did learn those lessons, but obviously it was from somebody else. It wasn't from MVP. The two of them never played. But it's pretty clear that Zest understood, like what I consider to be the ultimate version of StarCraft, which is like you have to understand like your own strengths, and then you create like a plan or game series in order to exploit those strengths, exploit the weaknesses, and create like series a series of games in which you will come out on top in a best of seven. That's generally what StarCraft is, right? And Zest is
Yeah.
like a monster, specifically at PvP, but also at PvZ during this entire time period.
Yeah.
Right. And that,
Um,
yeah, go ahead.
to me, it was especially PvP at the time
Mm-hmm.
because this was when Protoss was starting to get really good.
Yeah.
2014,
Blink era.
start of 2013, 2014, Blink era, exactly.
Yeah.
We just saw a lot of PvPs happening,
Mm-hmm.
and Zest had the matchup completely figured out.
Yeah.
Nobody was at the level he was in.
Mm-hmm.
He was at in PvP, and it showed where a lot of these games he played would sort of look the same
Yeah.
just because he had standard responses mapped out to every possible scenario in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what made him so good. He always had an answer. He always knew the exact correct thing to do
Yeah.
in the matchup. And for a long time, it looked the same way in PvZ and even PvT.
To an extent, like there, like you can break him down in
He
PvT.
didn't play against Maru then.
No,
Yes.
there's one other player that can fuck him up, but you won't get there until later in the time period.
You mean Cure?
No, I mean Tasia.
Oh yeah, Teja.
Like Tasia can fuck him up, but on the opposite end,
Yeah, that's true.
right? But
Teja fucks every Protoss.
yeah, he's quite good. But basically Mario is like a definite like weakness for Ray. For Zest, he's actually a weakness for a majority of Protosses except for Parting, and that's like its own little mini series, I guess, because basically Parting figured out because he had played. Did you know? Did you ever see the interview with Parting about Maru?
Which one do you mean?
Okay, so basically this is like 2015, 2016, like way after Parting's prime, basically. And like at this point, like Parting thinks he's done. So so he just starts revealing random secrets. And one of them is, yeah, I can always beat Maru. And the reason I can always beat Maru is because Maru has this really stupid tell where if he loses badly in like one of the games, he will immediately 11-11 the game after. And that's why I always win.
Oh really?
Yeah. So
That does sound like Maru.
that's exact. I went back and I watched every series that happened to Mario. That exactly happens every single time, including the OSL finals when he beats Rain.
It is a very Maru thing to do.
Yeah, so I just thought it was like hilarious. Basically, like Parting was in Mario's mind the entire 5 years they were playing together.
I also think Parting is a great example of someone who did well against Maru.
Mm-hmm.
For the same reasons that Maru
Zest.
did well against Zest.
Yeah.
Maru pushes the game to into scenarios where mechanics win out over everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And Zest never really had the mechanics to keep up with him.
Yeah.
Parting, however, does in
Yeah.
terms of control, but also macro.
Mm-hmm.
Parting is a much better mechanical player, in my opinion, than
Yeah.
Zest is.
Parting's basically like I basically made a video saying Parting was probably the best micro player StarCraft 2 has ever seen, and like Mario was second. But
Yeah.
like the fact that you're getting the second best, running into the best, and then like the best beats him every time, it's like there's a specific difference there, and that's definitely like Parting's thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Where, for example, Zest against Maru, he would do everything right and have units in the right positions. But Maru just was quicker on reactions and boosted into places where Zest didn't respond immediately. He lost a bunch of probes and then
Yeah.
all went downhill.
Yeah, then
Where Parting would react immediately
Yeah.
and shut everything down.
and basically like Maru versus Zest is such an interesting matchup specifically to me because it really challenges the idea of what point is it like mechanics and at what point is it tactics or strategy, because Maru is allowed to do things other Terrans cannot. Therefore, for him, tactically speaking, he is actually making the correct move. Whereas if you give that exact same move to somebody like MMA, it's a terrible fucking move.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing to think about when you're talking about Mario games specifically, because it's not like even if he like overextends, like you give him more leeway because he can make that work, and if he makes that work, it's such a huge victory for him compared to other Terrans. So it's like he's a very complicated like Terran player to analyze in that sense. And so basically now that Zest has gotten to the round of 8, he meets one of the all-time great players. Some people say he is the clutchest player of all time, but that can't be right because he lost to GSL playing one of his best matchups. Just point that out. But basically, it's SOS, the $100 million man or whatever they're calling him nowadays. And SOS is also a very smart player, but on the opposite end of Zest, where basically, like, if you had to put it this way, I think Zest actually is similar to Innovation in the fact that he actually mapped out every single iteration of the standard deviations. And then SOS was like the guy who he could just throw anything out there, but he'd immediately know how everything worked out by itself.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah. They're interesting to compare because I think they have very similar weaknesses actually.
Yeah, very similar
Where
weaknesses, very similar strengths, but in completely different areas.
yeah, Zest was like a very game management oriented but safe and standard player, whereas SOS had the same weaknesses in that his micro was never the greatest,
Mm-hmm.
and his overall macro and mechanics weren't the greatest.
But he was a
But his
smart
game
player, but he
management
was like
on
a
the
crazy
offensive
dude.
end
Yeah,
was
the best.
amazing and still is, and yeah, the best.
Yeah, like the best. Like he is by far the best like chaotic Protoss we have ever seen.
Yeah.
Like I don't think there's like even an argument to be made of anybody else, not even Haas, right?
Yeah. Whereas Zest was the exact opposite in a way that he was sort of he was like a calm, uh, collected guy in essentially every situation. He made the right defensive and safe
Mm-hmm.
decisions.
Right.
Whereas SOS would turn the whole thing upside down and completely balls to wall aggressive.
Yeah, but like every move he made complete sense within that game.
Yeah.
Like that's what makes SOS so weird. It's like because
Yeah.
usually people break down in those points, but he like ascended, so to speak. But
Yeah.
this is just I'll just go ahead. This is like a terrible matchup for SOS specifically against Zest, at least during this time period, because like there was nothing like Zest didn't know about PvP,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, it's worth noting that this specific series was played right after SOS traveled to Katowice and actually won his
100,000
$100,000
against Hero. Yes.
against Hero.
Shout outs to
And
Hero, losing to
yeah,
them proxy 2 gates all day, every day.
yeah.
Oh,
And
I should probably say this. I
SOS,
forgot. I don't know if I'll ever put this in a video because it's literally just a one-liner. But basically, I calculated the numbers. Hero has lost close to $200,000 in prize money to 2 gates.
yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty
that
ridiculous.
sucks. Yeah,
Shout
he's
out.
got to be happy that Legacy doesn't allow that anymore.
Yeah, what a lucky
Um,
bastard.
yeah. So I think this series against SOS doesn't tell us a lot because I believe that SOS got back to Korea on the same day he played that series and
Yeah.
was obviously completely jet lagged, and it sort of shows in his play.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Still, Zest did everything right in that series,
Yeah, like
but I think
I don't mind saying it. Even if he had like SOS at prime level, I don't think he had what it took to beat Zest.
yeah, I,
Yeah,
maybe not at that point,
certainly not at
but
that point.
later on, SOS actually does become kind of the only guy who can take Zest in PvP.
Mm-hmm.
Because SOS was always one of the best PvPers in the world as well,
Yeah.
and really stepped it up
Mm-hmm.
after that season.
Right. And then so we have an interesting sort of semifinals because nobody understands at the time what exactly it means, but retroactively we can tell Rain, best 2013 Zerg, best 2013 Protoss, about to get taken out by Zest, who's going to become the best Protoss, and then we have Life, at that point considered the best Zerg ever, to be taken out by the world's greatest silver player ever
Yeah.
in history. So, do you remember Zest versus Rain? Because
I do.
because I barely remember most of these PvPs. This is why you're here, actually. Because all I remember is like Zest, like literally like outthinking everybody's like, oh yeah, this makes sense why
Yeah.
Zest is winning.
This is that series really just shows that Zest had better understanding than everybody else in PvP
Mm-hmm.
at the time. Because Rain played very well, but Zest outdid him in. He chose the right build. He never picked the wrong fight. He always made the right decision, and he won in the end.
Yeah.
But you just saw that Rain was at an extremely high level himself,
Mm-hmm.
but Zest was just that tiny bit better at PvP.
Yeah.
And that's essentially all this series is. The games weren't that
Incredible.
spectacular. Yeah.
And then you get to the finals, and you have Sue's second second place. Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
this is like one of the few times where Sue actually he always had a decent shot in every single finals, but this is like
Yeah.
one of the
But this
closest he
one
ever
he
got
should have
to.
won. Yeah. This is
Base,
probably the closest.
yeah, this is the closest before like the mentality problems truly set in, and before like he tried to deny himself as a Kong, even though he's definitely a Kong. This is the
Yeah.
one, right?
Yeah. This is where I mean the first one against Deer. Okay, fair enough. Deer was
A god.
just a better player than Sue at the time.
Yeah,
And I do think that Zest was a better player than Sue at the time here as well.
but that doesn't mean
But
you
Sue was the better player in this
in this
particular
particular
final,
series. Yeah.
and he should have won it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Do you want to get
and
into
it was,
the series he should have won, the maps he should have won? Because I think he could have won
yeah,
two out of the four he lost. Definitely could have
yes.
won Yonsu, I think.
Jansu, there's like if he plays that game 20 more times, he wins all 20.
Yeah.
Uh, I think if you put like I don't want to say if you put any GM Zerg in that game
But
with a
I think
calm mind, he
if you
wins
put
the
like
game.
top five, any of the top five Zergs at a time, they probably would have won
Top
that
10
game.
probably.
Yeah,
Top 10.
even top 10. Like at the point where
Yeah.
Sue like really dominates that game because he's super far
Yeah.
ahead, right?
Yeah, he was up like 80 supply, a base ahead. Uh,
Yeah.
he just took 3 or 4 really bad fights and never transitioned behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't expand as rapidly as he could have, and never droned.
Yeah.
He went too aggressive and picked poor fights.
Yeah, you could say
And
he was
that
too
ruined
excited
him.
about his victory, about his
Yeah,
impending GSL victory, and
yeah,
instead of becoming the great champion he thought he was supposed to be, he's become the greatest Kong there ever was, right? The other map I actually think he probably should have won was Daedalus. What do you think?
Um,
I just feel like that map is so good for Zerg.
yes, it is, and I think he did the right thing. I remember he did like a. The thing with why Daedalus was so difficult was because the third base for Protoss was extremely wide open.
Mm-hmm.
So these mid-game timings that Zergs could do were extremely strong against any style that Protoss had. Because you were still very reliant on force fields in the mid-game.
Yeah.
And most Protoss went Colossus at the time, and so did Zest. And what Su did was a giant Roach Hydra Corruptor attack, I believe.
Yeah.
But Zest just microed everything really well.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't impossible for Protoss to hold this with perfect execution, and Zest had it. So I'm not sure that was a throw really, but
Yeah.
the Yonsu game that was
Yangtze was
stand up.
was definitely his for sure. All right.
Yes.
Okay, so basically, Zest gives Sue his second GSL runner-up and gets himself his first GSL. And then we go to, I think the Global Championship is next.
Yeah, that was right after.
Yeah, it was right after. Okay, so basically this is arguably a GSL. I'm pretty sure it counts, but whatever the case, it's definitely a Korean tournament, and it has all the best players. So whatever you want to say, all the best players are here, and they are all going to fight it out for the title as number one. And Zest continues his destruction. Basically, he gets seeded into like the second group stages, and the first group stages like a bunch of people fighting it out to the death, with Parting and Maru coming out on top. So,
Yep.
Group A has Zest, Parting, MMA, and Revival. And looking at that, I'm pretty sure we both think it would turn out exactly how it should have. Zest and Parting go out.
Yep.
Right? Group B was a surprise in that San goes out instead of Maru. But what can you say? Like San is good sometimes, and this was one of
Yeah.
those times.
Yeah. He has like 10 to 15 days in his entire career where he could have beaten anybody in the world. That was one of them.
Yeah.
And then the next day just
And the next day he played Parting. Yeah.
trashed him 3-0.
All right. And the semifinals that's going to come up is pretty important for both Zest and Sue. Both for this tournament and later down the line. Basically, Zest and Sue rematch, and it's another close series. This time, Zest wins 3-2. What did you think of this one?
I thought this one it's interesting in retrospect because Zest against Sue turns into this into the rivalry of 2014.
Mm-hmm.
That's not just because they play again in the GSL semifinals, but because these were the two players that
The two best players.
stood so far above everybody else
Yeah.
that just by existing they formed a rivalry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Zest again comes out on top
Yeah.
in a really close series, which is sort of it's funny because that's the story of 2014 overall. Zest comes out barely ahead,
Yeah.
and
Every single time.
yeah, it's not that Zest is a better player than Sua. I thought they were essentially as close as it gets,
Mm-hmm.
but Zest always won when it counted, and this is another one of these times.
Yeah. At least in 2014, he won when he counted.
Yeah.
Let's pretend Legacy of the Void doesn't exist yet, right?
I mean, he didn't do that poorly in Legacy.
He did
I
okay
don't
at the
think.
beginning. Did okay at the beginning. Did pretty good.
Yeah, I don't
Then
think he lost anything that he should have won.
I feel like you have to win all of them. Basically, it's my opinion. Uh, all right, so it basically meets. This is actually another very close finals. It's Zest versus Parting, and this one goes all 7 games. And
Yeah.
Parting actually puts up a really fucking good fight, all things considered. He goes up 3-1 on Zest, and then Zest turns it around, and then wins the 4-3. Do you remember this one?
Yeah, it was a really good PvP series.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of variety in it. It just kind of that series showed what the magic of Zest was in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
He had this aura around him that he couldn't lose when it mattered, and that went through his 3SL run and this one as well.
Yeah.
And after this tournament, Zest establishes himself as
The best
number one
player.
player in the
Yeah.
world.
Basically keeps that title for the entire 2014, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then go to, because this is a guy that's going to travel a lot, but when he does travel, it's going to be pretty good. But we go to GSL Season 2, and this one isn't quite as good as Season 1. Gets to the playoffs, and I don't. Group A was pretty bad.
Oh yeah.
Let's just skip that. Group D was pretty good actually because he gets Sulky, Innovation, and Shine, but he plays and beats both Innovation and Sulky, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I will
It's a
say,
good group.
yeah, I will say this. Was this? I think this was during Blink era still, right? Am I mistaken?
I'm not sure.
It's kind of. I don't
But
really
I
quite remember the
believe
exact
so.
timelines. Maybe, like it seems like Mario's the only surviving Terran, but that's just because Mario's like the only good Terran in Korea at that point.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Still, Terran had 4 players in Codes, so I think this was still Blink era,
Yeah,
or
but
like shortly after the patch where
yeah, okay,
people hadn't rotated in and out
yeah,
of
but
Codes yet.
yeah, basically like Zas beats Innovation pretty clearly because Innovation, for all of his talent, all of his greatness, can never do what Maru or MVP or Teja does and win in a bad meta, right? Basically a patch Terran,
Yeah.
if you will. And so
And he was SKT. So I
yeah,
heard.
and he was SKT, so it was like a double buff, I guess, for Zest.
Yeah.
And Sulky is that
Sulky too.
Sulky's still pretty solid, all things considered.
Yeah.
But basically, as far as Sulky's history goes, I think he starts burning out at this point,
Yeah.
right?
It does.
Right.
Absolutely.
Like he can't handle this SKT shit anymore or this Kespa shit anymore. So he's gonna be slowly fading out of relevancy, even though I think he was and still could be one of the more talented Zergs we've seen in StarCraft.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
At his peak, he was
he was
extremely good.
yeah, right. Like I still think he is an incredibly good player.
Yeah.
And then we run into playoffs. Do you remember True versus Zest? Because True takes Zest out here.
Yeah. And that series, I think that's a great series to show where Zest's weaknesses are.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, the way I see it, if Zest has played against something a couple times and has mapped out responses to things he's encountered before, he's gonna win. At this point in 2014, at least, because he's better than everybody else.
Yeah.
And if he's played against something before, he'll beat it. But True has this build prepared for him where he defends anything in the early game with lings and queens and just doesn't take gas for a very long time.
Yeah.
and tech's extremely hard. And Zest, it's obvious in this series that Zest has never played against it before.
Mm-hmm.
Because the 3 games he loses, he tries something different every game, and it just doesn't work. Sue wins against him. And the final game on Frost is especially hilarious because Zest does Soul Train and True kills him with slow links.
If that doesn't show you exactly why Zest is not considered an all-time great micro player, I don't know what will.
Yeah. That was so uncharacteristic for a player like Zest, who up until this point he trashed his round of 32 group. It beats Sophie and Innovation, 2 of the best players in the world in Group D, wins that group, and is considered the top favorite to win this tournament as well.
Yeah.
And then that series happens.
Yeah, then he loses to like one of the 2 worst players in the round of 8. Only guy worse is Paralyzed, of course. Paralyzed, rest in peace, your Afro. You were much less interesting after that.
True was worse.
You think True was worse than Paralyzed? He might have been.
At this point, yes. Because Paralyzed had like 1 season where he was legitimately decent, and that was it.
And he did beat Life, I guess. I'll give him that. He did beat Life.
Yeah, he beat Life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
he beat him twice, actually.
Yeah, but I believe I forget if Life. No, Life definitely didn't throw this one. So yes, this one counted.
Yeah, that counts.
Yeah, this one definitely counted. So yeah, basically, that's the end for GSL Season 2. Sue, of course, goes on to the next finals, and of course loses to Classic. Your boy Classic. Classic himself. This is a tangent, but basically, the Protosses that gonna come after Zest, basically, they're all like versions of Zest in my brain, basically. Like, you think of Classic, you think, okay, pretty solid player, all things considered. But unlike Zest, he actually has much better execution, and he's much better at the variety of builds he can deploy. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't quite have like Zest's like ascendant understanding of every like iteration, every branch off. But he's still a pretty good all around Protoss player, and that's why he wins this GSL. Then you have Hero, doesn't exactly have Zest's brain or Classic's brain, but he has much better execution. But like still can play the overall spectrum of games, generally speaking. And then you also have Stats, similar category, probably closer to Classic than to Hero, right?
Yeah, I think Stats was always very similar to Zest, only that he was just a bit worse in decision making.
Yeah, a bit worse in decision making, and I think his execution is a bit better too.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm. And then Hero, I compare a lot to Parting, where they both.
Hero is a much less interesting Parting, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, basically.
That's a good way to put it.
Like, yeah. I'll just straight up say it. Like, Hero's had good micro, but he couldn't somehow bullshit his way out of like a PvZ comeback the way Parting could. Parting made like a living off of that. Like, Parting didn't understand that matchup, but he knew how to fucking micro, man. He knew how to fucking micro. Yeah. He didn't play PvZ. He just played like micro games. That's how he won his PvZs, right? So, yeah.
Whereas Hero had great execution of builds, and it either worked or it didn't.
Yeah.
He could play a normal game as well, but
yeah,
it was not that special.
Yeah, basically Hero lacked soul. Like, straight up. Like, there was like a lack of soul in his game, in a sense. And like, I understand why like regular fans like flock to him, because the only thing they understand are Blink Stalkers. But in actuality, like, he was probably the least interesting Protoss champion to come out of this era among all the like championship type Protosses. Right? Not complete side tangent, just shitting on Hero. Rest in peace. He still lost to 2 racks.
I don't want to shit on him. He's a good player.
He's a good player.
He's a very good player.
He's still a very good player, right? But I'm just pointing out he's like the least interesting to me. Like, when you consider like stylistic tendencies, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and
I guess Stats is very close second.
Yeah, Stats is pretty uninteresting too. Yeah. He just wins sometimes. He's quite good at winning.
He's just good at essentially everything, but he's not that
interesting.
He doesn't have the variety of Classic, or
he doesn't have the variety of Classic. He doesn't have the mind of Zest, and he doesn't have the micro of Parting. And it's not like he doesn't have either versions of Rain. Basically, like either like the super dominant defend everything Protoss Rain, or the I can actually switch it up and cheese the shit out of you now Rain. Like, he doesn't have either of those. right? So
Yep.
that's why he's the least interesting. And of course, like SOS is SOS, he's his own thing.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So basically, we go. I guess we'll go to continue on the GSL season 3, and this is where like the GSL Global Championship matchup between Sue and Zest is gonna come to fruition a little bit because they both make it to the playoffs. Zest actually loses, I think, to Rain here in the group stages, but he still makes it
First
out.
group stage.
Yeah, group stages makes it out.
Yep.
And then in Group A, he has a pretty tough group, basically, Kier. And you're thinking to yourself, who the fuck is Kier? Kier was a super overhyped Terran. Basically, think of him as miniature Flash or miniature Innovation, except except his like mechanics and skill didn't last much longer than like 2 months. But he was quite good for those 2 months or so.
Yeah.
So there you go. And so there's Kier, Zest, Sulky in reality. Zest beats Sulky to get out of this one twice and loses to Kier in the winners match. And this sets Zest on a path towards Sue. First, of course, Zest versus Rain. Do you remember this?
Yeah. Zest versus Rain was actually very interesting in that season because this is the point in time where I think Rain reaches his peak performance
As a player?
all time. Like as a player, I don't think he ever plays better
Yeah.
than at this point in time.
Which is also kind of ironic because he's going to learn the lessons from MVP basically in 2015 on how you're supposed to win. And that's when he actually gets his GSL win. It's not this time when he's actually like an awesome player.
Yeah.
Right?
At this point in time, I believe that coincides with Pro League playoffs,
Yeah.
where SKT as a whole kind of slumps, but Rain carries them through the playoffs undefeated. I think 8 or 9-0
Yeah, something ridiculous like
just
that.
top players, and then beats Zest in Codes,
Yeah.
where people just for a couple of weeks were asking themselves whether it was still Zest who was the top dog or
Rain had surpassed him.
if it was Rain now.
Yeah.
And Rain also wins his round of 16 group,
Yeah.
where Zest just gets second. Makes it look easy there as well.
Yeah.
Rain does.
Yeah. Effort.
And then they meet in the quarterfinals of Codes, and that was probably the most exciting matchup on paper.
Yeah.
But Zest wins 3-0.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that.
Yep. Zest wins.
All the discussion goes to shit.
Yeah, it's because Zest
Yeah.
is a smarter player still. Like, what do you want me to say?
Yeah.
He was still a smarter player. And Rain had yet to learn the lessons MVP was trying to impart on him. Right? And as for Sue, basically, Sue does this amazing thing because basically Flash comes out back from IEM Toronto, wins that entire thing, from what I remember, was on this ridiculous Pro League streak.
Oh, that was that.
It was that time. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my fucking god, my heart is broken because all these Flash fans are just spamming, oh god, Flash is saving the world, Flash is saving StarCraft 2. Finally, it's here, the Bonjour we've been promised. No, Sue destroys that dude so hard. He gives him a 30 drone lead and he still fucking smashes Flash. That's how ridiculous Sue was at that point. What a ridiculous human that Sue guy was. And Sue destroys Flash, and then Dongrygu also destroys Flash. So rest in peace, Flash. Hype train from 2014 to 2014. Like actually, it was like August of 2014 to September 2014. Lasted a week.
Yeah, it was like 1 or 2 weeks at max.
It was like the most overhyped hype train I've ever seen in my life. Ridiculous, but whatever.
Yeah.
In any case, shout outs to Sue for destroying that hype train, making me believe in love and hope and all the good things in the world again. And so you have Zest versus Sue in the semifinals, the third matchup in this year. And the reason I've cited the GSL Global Championship as an important matchup is because Sue's going to learn something very important from that matchup, and that is you really have to throw off Zest. Or maybe he learns this in the GSL Season 2 when True takes out Zest. Basically, he's gonna pull off a bunch of builds to take Zest off his game. Do you remember those builds?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think you're right in mentioning the True series again.
Yeah.
Because True showed that, as I said before, if Zest hasn't seen something before,
Mm-hmm.
he will generally struggle to deal with it properly. And in this series, you can really see how the first 4 games, Zest is allowed to play his thing,
Yeah.
and Sue looks nowhere near close to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember Kat saying on Twitter that he had prepared a bunch of different builds with Sue specifically for Zest,
Yeah.
and you see them one by one kicking in, and that preparation was what wins Sue the series.
Yeah.
Because he does things like proxy hatcheries in the wall
Mm-hmm.
on merry-go-round, for example. I think Foxtrot Labs or King Sejong was also proxy hatch, or maybe Overgrowth was.
Uh-huh.
It was just these weird aggressive builds that aren't standard, that Zest would have had to alter his builds in a way that he wasn't comfortable or experienced with.
Yeah.
And that's what wins Sue the series. It's a really, really interesting series.
Yeah.
Recommend everybody to watch that if you're interested.
Yeah. Basically, Sue pulls off an MVP. Basically,
Yes.
he straight up like, you are better in every single aspect of what we call StarCraft 2, but I'm better at playing playing you than I am at playing the matchup. And that's basically how Sue wins this one. Pretty close series anyway, but it shows like how like basically one of the reasons GSL is so highly touted, in my opinion, is because you get this extra preparation time. And I'll be honest, I think actually like 95% of the players I've seen throughout GSL's entire history, they don't actually use this preparation time that great. This is one of those times where it's actually incredibly, where like Sue basically brings it to Zest. And like that extra time is why Sue is so incredible. It's also why Sue is like in so many fucking GSL finals. Because Sue's basically like the best or either the second best prep player we've ever seen. Like, only other guy you can put him up against this MVP basically at this point. Right? So, an incredible like series if you just want to look into the mind of how Sue thought you should theoretically beat Zest. Right?
Yep, and he was right. That's the cool thing about this series, that his preparation gets rewarded.
Yeah.
With
with a victory
other
over
Protoss finals defeat.
Yeah.
Against,
And then shout outs to Innovation for taking out Sue again, creating the most important narrative of StarCraft 2 history. Sue in finals, in GSL finals. So basically, Sue loses this one. There are a lot of reasons why I think Sue lost this one, but this is about Zest. We're not going to go into that. I'm sure somebody else will bemoan the fact that basically Innovation got a great patch. So, we'll skip on that one, and then we're gonna go overseas.
We're also gonna ignore that Cure was 1 game away from Protoss finals.
Yeah, and that actually could have helped Sue win that one too, but too bad, Sue. Another one missed.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe it would have been Protoss champion Cure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Rather than just.
Yeah, maybe it would have just been another loss in GSL and Sue's giant bag of losses. So we go to overseas because basically Zest only plays 2 foreigner tournaments this year. IEM Shenzhen, and like I said before, like we talked about Maru exploiting Zest's weakness. Now we're going to talk about a guy who can straight up play against Zest's strengths and beat him out, basically. Because there's one player that Zest will have never played against in his entire career, and that is Tasia, because Tasia went to WCSNA, and the two of them never met. And they play out. First time they meet is IEM Shenzhen playoffs. Do you remember this?
Yeah, that's it's a great series to watch. Because where we thought Zest's game management was second to none, Tasia beats him at exactly that.
Yeah, basically like second to none is actually second to Tasia. Right?
Yeah. Well, at that point, we saw Zest as like the guy.
Yeah, the guy.
Beat everybody else. And then he beat Tasia, who, in all of these games, Zest did his thing that was mapped out and looked good. And then Tasia went, okay, there's a weakness here, and if I do this, no matter how unreasonable it seems, I have to do this.
Yeah.
And then I have a chance to win. And he
did
that, and Zest was so caught off guard by someone outdoing his game management that
he couldn't deal with it.
He ends up, he couldn't deal with it. He falls apart and ends up making questionable decisions,
Yeah.
whereas Teja's every decision is correct.
Yeah.
It's funny to watch.
Yeah. Basically, like, it's funny to watch. It's funny. It was funny watching Teja's career at that point because this is a guy who went to WCSNA, and so everybody actually straight up considers him bad for whatever reason, because he can't win. Does terribly in WCSNA relative to his skill level. So everybody's like, "Oh, this guy's overhyped. This guy is shit." But all of a sudden, you throw him up against the best players in the world. So we're talking like Rain, WCS Season 2, Innovation, WCS Season 2, Zest here. He actually plays straight up their games, and then he beats them in the strongest parts of their games, basically. And that's always been like Teja's like uh Teja is like the white whale of like the Korean of every like fucking greatest of all time player, because if you meet him up in a like fucking foreigner tournament where you don't have the preparation or anything like that, where you don't have like a specific game plan to try to exploit him or the race, what ends up happening is all these Korean players, they all think in their heads, man, this guy's a runner. He can't possibly be as good as me. I'll just play my straight up game. And then they play up the straight up game, and Teja plays their straight up game, and then Teja beats them in the straight up game, and then they all fall apart. Like every single one of them falls apart. And that's basically what happens to Zest here. Like Zest is like very confused, like, what? I played in the best region in the world. Nobody's better than me. And then actually, no, Teja is better than you. Sadly for Zest, he comes to this conclusion, and then this actually happens again in IEM Toronto. Though luckily for Zest, I believe they only meet in the group stages and not in the playoffs.
Yeah. As far as Taser goes, also, I think this is another scenario where Taser plays unlike any other Terran in the world,
Yeah,
and Zest is good against things he meets on the ladder all the time.
yeah.
And Taser he never meets because Taser doesn't practice.
Teja doesn't practice. Shout out to Teja. Hiding them strats.
Yeah.
Hiding them strats.
Next level. Don't practice so people don't know how we play.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, Teja does things that Zest doesn't expect, even though the things Teja does are the right things to do.
Yeah.
Teja just kind of plays how Terran is supposed to play, but nobody can really make it work.
As in, literally nobody. We have had actually
Yes, exactly.
8 years of history. The closest you will ever get to a Teja player is MVP, and he had 5 slip discs. So don't really know how close it really was, all things considered.
5 slip discs.
Yeah.
We're gonna hear this a lot.
Yeah, 4 GSLs, 5 slip disc. Yeah. Great. Great to have an actual number, so I could just make it into a motto from now on. But back to Zest, because Zest, I'm gonna go ahead and skip Yoda because nobody cares about Yoda, the match fixer. Because unlike Life, he actually wasn't that good. But we are gonna go to the other match fixer because apparently Zest was all about destroying the match fixers in this tournament. He plays Life in the semifinals, and Life was on the rise again. Is that a correct way to put it? He's basically much like Teja. He's like, I don't feel like playing. Then he waits for like 9 months. I feel like playing again. And then all of a sudden he's good again. Like,
yeah, I think Life wasn't really up and down this entire year. I think he constantly held this level where he was a good player, but he was sort of below the best Turks.
Yeah.
He was like 4 or 5 maybe. He was just not that special at the time. This tournament was where he slowly started showing the things he was famous for and doing the things that when he was in form he was the best in.
Yeah.
But I don't think he was quite up there yet. Essentially, the Zest series shows that where Zest outdoes him in standard games pretty much.
Yep.
It just shows that Life isn't quite at the level yet that he reaches only at Blizzcon.
And of course, you have the finals where my boy Zest loses to Flash. I was quite upset at this because it built the hype train, but then it actually led to a much greater crash. So all things considered, I'm pretty happy this happened. But what do you remember of this finals?
Yeah, it was a terrible series.
Yeah.
Because at this point it started to show that Zest was kind of bad at team kills. Maybe I don't know why. Maybe he thought that if he did his standard thing, his teammates would know exactly what he was doing and be able to exploit that. But he does things that go essentially things that he never does otherwise.
Yep.
He does weird Immortal Sentry all-ins against Terran. These weird aggressive builds that he really isn't known for, and it shows that in this series that he isn't completely comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially he kills himself more than Flash killed him. I
Yeah,
feel.
that's a good way to put it. It's because it's not like it's a Mario game where like it's pretty clear, like stylistically speaking, Mario counters Zest, and it's not like a Tasia game where it's pretty clear, like Tasia is just playing Zest's game but better than Zest.
Mm.
It just feels like a pretty underwhelming game, all things considered. Like, even though like there's a bunch of Flash lovers, not even they like talk about, oh man, that was such a great. No, nobody talks about that game as if it was such a great finals. Pretty forgettable, all things considered. Except it setups for one of the greatest hype train crashes in StarCraft 2 history.
Yeah.
Shout outs to Zest for doing that.
It's-
Right. Next tournament is gonna be another Kespa Cup, right? Basically, he PvPs the shit out of this one. Right.
Yes. He all PvPs the shit out of this one actually.
Yeah.
It's 4 PvP series in a row. Pig Baby, SOS, Classic, and Hero.
Yep.
So aside from Rain, who at this point was starting to fade out,
Yeah. Basically.
he plays all the best PvPers in the world
Yep.
and beats them all.
Uh-huh.
Makes them look silly too.
Yeah. Basically destroys them. Like it's pretty clear. Like this is going to be the best PvP player we've ever seen, and that is the height of like his. That's the height of his skill relative to everybody else, in my opinion. In terms of PvP, because you had such great PvPers, but none of them could touch Zest, basically.
Yeah. And in this tournament as well, the only guy that goes close is SOS.
3-2.
Yeah.
Even gets like
SOS was
2-0
always
up,
the guy
right?
that got closest to Zest.
Yeah.
They met a lot in Pro League as well, where SOS beats him a couple times, but
But like,
still Zest is the best PvPer in the world, and
yeah.
to me, the best PvPer of all time.
Yeah. Pretty undisputed, I think. He's the best PvPer there ever was. So yeah, that covers that one. And then now we're gonna go to one of his failures, BlizzCon. Now tell me about BlizzCon. Tell me
Right.
about that dude named Life. That dude named Life.
Yes. So this tournament is weird, to say the least. Because going into this, Zest and Sue, after the year they've had, were hyped as the 2 big favorites in the tournament.
I actually
And
had
essentially-
Tasia myself, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Tasia was
Tasia
the wild
Tasia
card.
was a fucking freak, man. It's like,
Yeah, he was.
but yeah, but definitely like if you want, you can go ahead and say Zest and Sue, number 1, number 2, and the players in the world.
Yeah.
No doubt
And
about
then
that.
maybe Innovation.
And
He just won
Innovation
Protoss.
just won GSL, right? So yeah,
And they were all like, if you look at this bracket,
they're all in the same bracket.
all of them are in the lower bracket.
Yeah.
Where Zest plays Life first, Sue plays Tasia, and Innovation plays Young.
Yeah.
And I remember watching all of this in Taiwan at MSI Beat It.
Okay.
That was at the same time. And I remember watching Tasia against Sue with Solar. This is just a
Yeah.
funny anecdote. Because Solar was balance whining the entire time
About Terran, yeah.
about Terran when Tasia did things that just seemed untouchable and made Sue look
Like a fool.
just like a fool, or even trying.
Mm-hmm.
But Zest against Life it's a weird series.
Yeah.
Because Zest goes into this as a heavy favorite
Mm-hmm.
after beating Life in Toronto and just being a much, much better player than Life all
Mhm.
year long.
Yeah.
But
But Life decided to
For-
try now.
yeah, for some reason and somehow Life shows up at this tournament.
It's not some
And-
reasons. Like this is literally like his fucking history, basically, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Like when he seriously puts hours into the game, he's really fucking good.
Yes, he is. But he hadn't shown anything before this
Yeah.
tournament.
So there's no
This is just
actual
that
reason to
it
suggest it,
happened.
right? Yeah.
And the series against Zest, again, it's more Zest playing poorly than it is Life playing brilliantly.
Mm-hmm.
Because King Sejong and Overgrowth, on both maps, Life I think does some kind of all-in,
Yeah.
and Zest reacts poorly to it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Overgrowth specifically because Zest does the most standard 3-gate +1 uh, mass sentry third expand. Uh, that was all the rage then.
Mm-hmm.
And Life did berries, just a bread and butter roachling all in.
Yeah.
That Zest surely would have seen a million times on ladder,
Mm-hmm.
but he moved out before scouting with his hallucination, and then got caught by Lings in the middle of the map, had poor force fields, and everything went to shit in that series.
Yep.
And then he pulled it back on Nimbus and Merry-Go-Round just by playing competent games.
Mm-hmm.
Nimbus was a super late game, mass air against mass air.
Oh, that's why I don't remember it. It's because like I try to
Yeah,
block those out of my
that was
mind.
a terrible game.
Yeah.
But Zest wins this by better game management, and Merry-Go-Round, that was a bloodbath. I remember Zest does a lot of damage with, I think, a Blink Stalker all in,
Mm-hmm.
and then Life goes all in himself with a Hydra attack,
Yeah.
and Zest barely holds with Blink Stalkers, but a lot shakier than it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Catalina, Zest does a terrible cannon rush and loses the game.
Yeah.
That's that. That's the best player in the world eliminated from the biggest tournament
Yeah.
in StarCraft.
Yep. There was this entire thing about at the time you talked about it was like jet lag. Apparently, like Zest got there late or something. Was that right?
Yeah, like I'm not sure if this played a role, but I heard that Zest2 and a bunch of the Kespa players arrive in California only a day or so before the tournament.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say
And
like jet lag from east to west is pretty fucking bad. So I understand that, but on the other hand, it's not like he had 5 slip disc. Could have done more, just in my opinion.
yes, should have probably. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it's actually a
because
symbolic fucking tournament. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, no. Especially because if he had beaten Life,
Yeah,
he would have probably had a free pass in the quarterfinals and would have made at least the semis
yeah.
with San or Jakji, his opponent, with the quarterfinals. And
But
then
he would have ran into Tasia though.
yeah, everybody sort of expected the winner of the
Bottom bracket to
uh,
win.
bottom bracket to win the whole tournament.
Yeah,
And it did happen, but it was the one guy nobody expected to do it.
yeah. Well, people expected life more
Well,
than Hyun and Jakji and San.
yeah,
Put it
yeah,
that way. But
yeah,
basically, like the reason I call this like a symbolic tournament is basically like think about it this way. You pointed it out. The bottom bracket has Zest, Sue, Innovation. Basically, like the three at that point, the three strongest players from Kespa, and everybody was talking about, oh yeah, these Kespa guys are going to take over. They're going to win. But I've always stated this, and I'll always continue to say it. Like there are certain prodigies that it doesn't really matter what training you give them. It doesn't really matter what system they come from. They'll win no matter what the fuck it happens. And in the semifinals, guess who meets up? It's not Zest or Sue or Innovation. It's actually Life and Tasia, right? So that's kind of
yeah,
how it goes. And basically, Tasia destroys Sue and Innovation in the way I've basically been describing this entire time. Game management up the wazoo, like the best there ever was. And the only good game Life actually plays in this entire tournament, because let's face it, Life actually has like some of the worst games you
yeah,
will ever see of any pro in the entire StarCraft 2 history. The only good games he ever plays against are against Tasia, because for whatever reason, Tasia can keep up with whatever madness Life is throwing out, so it forces Life to actually play the game of StarCraft.
yeah. And until this point in the tournament, Life had done nothing special at all.
Yeah,
Um, the series against Zest was more, again, Zest being bad than Life being great.
yeah,
San rolled over and died.
yeah,
And then only Tasia really brought it out of Life,
yeah,
that Life had to play competent and really, really good games.
yeah.
And he did.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, Life beat him fair and square.
Yeah. But then Dream
in
would
a
avenge
very
Life.
good series.
Dream would avenge
Yeah.
Tasia. And
this Life versus Tasia is actually a great series.
yeah, probably one of the
Just
best games you've probably ever see, right?
Yeah, King's Zone.
Yeah, because like the way they think about the game is so distinctly them in every single aspect of that game, right? Because they both, like, if you look out through all of the games, they are always making seemingly unorthodox moves, but they're all correct strategically and tactically. So
yeah,
that's why it's always interesting to watch the two of them play when they play against good players. Because, like, I talk about Life having a shitload of bad games, Tasia also has a shitload of bad games in his career. Like, so many of them are so fucking bad. Oh my god. I actually don't blame anybody for thinking Tasia was not good, because, like, almost like 80% of his games are like, oh, the other guy just died. Like, oh, okay, that's great. Fantastic.
No, not just that. He also plays games where he just dies.
Yeah, that too.
Remember 2013 against Deer, for example,
Yeah.
on Protoss, where Tasia and Deer do standard macro things. Nobody attacks, then Deer sends 2 High Templars, storms Tasia's entire army, and the game is over.
Yeah, it's like
out of nowhere, just because Tasia isn't looking.
Yeah.
That's that.
Yeah. So, like, two of them have a bunch of bad games, but every once in a while they get like a super godly game. So
Yeah.
this was definitely
Especially
one of those.
if they played against one another.
Mhm.
Life against Tasia has, throughout both their careers, this is a highlight matchup where it's not just this series, it's a ton of series that have good games and are just overall great series.
Yeah.
between these two. They just kind of brought it out
Against it,
another.
yeah. In my opinion, like, they kind of defined the strongest era of StarCraft 2, the two of them, because they're like such fucking prodigies. Like, it doesn't even matter how good the Keswa system is or how many great players that came out. Like, these guys were unstoppable when they were unstoppable, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think around this time, BlizzCon, maybe 2015, a bit earlier, 2014 is, in my eyes, the strongest era in StarCraft 2.
Yeah, 2014, right? I think.
Yeah, 2014, 15.
2014, 2015, arguably points in 2013, but I think those are like by far the strongest. That's by far the strongest competitive era.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then after that point, you have to like talk about caveats, like, okay, who were the top players then relative to that point? What was the meta? Did you have Fife slip disc, etc.? Right. I'm just gonna keep throwing that in there because that's such a great line.
That's 3 times so far.
Yeah, that's such a great line. Okay, back to the actual topic of this this video. It's Zest. So
worth noting as well is just to round out this BlizzCon is that it's another tournament where Hero dies to Proxy 2-Gate.
Yes, he loses to Proxy 2-Gate a lot. Like, I think he actually loses it to Zest.
Zest
also,
well,
Kesma Cup, right?
It's like the only time I've ever seen Zest Proxy 2-Gate.
Yeah, because Zest is like, oh my god, that's just free money. How can I not do it? Like, oh yes.
Yes.
Yeah, like I said, he basically CJ Hero loses $200,000 to 2-Gate.
Yeah.
Approximately. So. Yeah, so basically we're gonna go to Zest's last title win in Heart of the Swarm. Remember this? The IEM World Championship, where he still swore by Zest. Oh wait, no, we gotta go back Hot Six because that's important.
Because he loses to Marine King.
Yes, because this.
We skipped this.
I'm not going to skip this for sure because this is great. This is actually hilarious for me. Oh, we'll go ahead and skip the group stage. Then he beats Sulky. Like I said, Sulky's on the decline. He's basically burned out. And this is like a tangent, but basically I think Sulky either should have quit StarCraft 2 immediately and played Brood War, or he should have quit Brood War immediately and played StarCraft 2.
Yeah.
Like, he got in the middle of those two polls, and like he has like a worse career as a result, in my opinion. Like, either the other two options would have been much better for Sulky as a human and Sulky as a player.
Yeah, this tournament is so funny.
It's so good because okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the meta for a second. So this is actually one of the points where like if you don't know Olli, man, you guys don't know Olli, but basically like every once in a while I come back, I'll go and start StarCraft 2 and be like, okay, so what's the meta like, guys? And I'm always like, this is fucking bullshit. You don't understand, Steven. Those goddamn Terrans and those fucking nutcases, they're fucking brain dead. They don't understand this fucking game. They are destroying this game. This is bullshit. Protoss can't do anything. This is actually one of those times where he was right, Protoss couldn't do anything. And the reason I know that is because Marine King somehow got to the fucking finals of this tournament. That's how I know it's true. That's how I know it's true.
I mean, in my defense, it was not that Protoss couldn't do anything. Protoss was decent against Terran, but I thought that Terrans were playing absolutely stupid games.
They were playing stupid games. Marine King got to the finals, man.
Yeah, and this tournament is so fucking funny because if you look at the players that Marine King beats, he beats Stats,
Yes.
then he beats CJ Hero,
Yes.
then he beats Parting, and then he beats Zest.
Yes.
And then he meets SOS in the finals, and SOS is just like, the fuck are you doing, dude?
And like SOS is like the first guy is like
and beats him with like his first 3 units twice.
Yes. I always knew Marine King was a fucking fraud, and I'm so happy. Like this is actually how I felt when Zest lost to Flash, and then Sue and DRG bodied Flash. This exact same feeling. Like I was like, okay, Zest is surely gonna beat Marine King. No, it doesn't beat Marine King. It doesn't realize what Marine King's doing is literally like the dumbest, cheesiest shit you could possibly do, which is like, don't build any fucking defensive units at all in the early game and hope they don't attack you. Cross your fingers. SOS is like, no, fuck that shit. Just attack him with my 3 units and I'll win. And he wins. It's absolutely glorious in my eyes. So yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to Zest for...
I remember these games too because all these Protoss were sort of doing the right thing because Marine King was remarkably greedy throughout his entire career.
Yeah. And
so Parting, Hero, Stats, Zest, they all tried to cheese him and all in him. But somehow Marine King held.
Yeah.
And turned these games around. And then SOS shows up and goes, well, I'm just going to attack even earlier. Marine King dies to like a Zealot, a Stalker, and a Mothership Core. I think twice in this series.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
At least on Catalina and I think on Foxtrot Labs as well.
Because that was actually the game plan. I was like, somebody just throw a Stalker at him. I think he'll literally die to a Stalker. Like, thank you, SOS. Yes, you literally died to a Stalker.
Yeah. And Sky High makes the semifinals.
Yep, Sky High.
Gets trashed.
Gets trashed. Oh my god, that guy did not deserve anything. Okay, so.
Yes, but he also beat Flash in the tournament.
Oh yeah, I'll give him a shout out for beating Flash.
He beat Classic as well. What the fuck?
Here's the thing, like nobody remembers this because they don't go back and look at all the match results, but I do. But basically, here's a theory I've actually come up with: is in every 8 players, 2 of them are going to be upsets, and this one is actually holds up basically Marine King and Sky High. But basically, like everybody thinks in their heads, oh, it's so competitive this current era because there's more upsets. No, it's actually not the case. It's actually the same number of upsets throughout the entire history of StarCraft 2. But like some of them are just way funnier than others. This is definitely one of them. Sky High and Marine King. This is probably one of the funnier tournaments in StarCraft 2 history.
Also worth noting that Byung won his group by beating Parting and Zest 0.
See, this is also another reason I know Terrano's super imbalanced is because like somehow Sky High, Byung, and Marine King are doing well in this tournament. Like, come on. You expect me to believe all 3 of them doing well at the same time? Get the fuck out of here.
This was a great one.
Yeah.
God.
And of course, like innovation, the great litmus test of Terran strength. So there you go. Yeah. All the omens showed up. Terran was imbalanced. All right.
Okay. Let's move on from this because
let's move on to Zest's last great title in Heart of the Storm.
No, it's not.
Heart of the Storm?
Oh, Heart of the Storm. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, right?
It is in Heart of the Storm. Yes.
Yeah, because basically...
the next one is Legacy.
Yeah, the next one shows them Legacy. But basically, Zest is going to start getting exposed very soon because nobody realizes... Or it's not that nobody realizes, it's just like the matchups don't work out so that Zest's weaknesses don't get exposed as much. So we're talking about like the Maru weakness and the True/Sue weakness. But obviously the True/Sue weakness isn't going to apply to IEM World Championship because it's a weekender, so you don't have that time to prep specifically to take out Zest.
Yeah.
Right?
So this tournament, IEM World Championship, follows a long period of time where he somehow failed to qualify for Codas and Starleague. And so just doesn't play in Korea at all for some reason.
Are we talking about Zest? Right?
Zest, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, how do I put this? With Zest, he's a bit similar to Innovation in the way that he does best when Protoss does well,
Mm-hmm.
but it's more because of the way
He is as a player.
he is as a player than
Then it is.
things just not working for
Yeah.
Innovation. He's actually the opposite of Innovation in that Innovation is stubborn and will do the same thing even if it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But Zest will figure out really quickly that things he's doing are not supposed to work,
Yeah.
and then he'll try everything
Mm-hmm.
and do things that don't play to his strengths.
Yeah.
And this is why a lot of the time when Protoss isn't good, he appears to lose skill
Significantly.
in a way.
Yeah.
It's more that he's no longer confident in playing to his own strengths
Mm-hmm.
because he believes that things he's doing are not supposed to work. And
Right.
this is that time where he struggles heavily against Terran
Yeah.
because the things he does against Terran, just
Don't work.
safe, safe conservative play, are starting to fade and
And thinks.
theoretically are really bad.
Yeah. Basically, like aggression is on the rise.
Yeah,
Execution, micro, like these are important things to have, and he doesn't have them. But basically, at least at this tournament, he does make it to the finals. Does win. He plays Hydra.
yeah,
Um, Now Hydra was a decent Zerg player. I think he was a bit overhyped for winning or getting in the finals of WCS NA at that time, but he's decent enough. I think he wasn't bad, but he wasn't like somebody I'd put on my radar as like a top five Zerg at the time,
yeah.
right?
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I don't really remember this one because it was Hydra. Because
I do. I remember that Hydra actually played very well this
yeah,
series. Also that Zest didn't play that well. Um,
yeah, but somehow like Zest wins.
yeah, this is a messy tournament all in all.
Yeah,
Because against Innovation in the quarterfinals, he also doesn't play very well.
yeah,
You can really see that Zest is doing a lot of different builds that he wouldn't have done before. For
mm-hmm.
example, on Secret Spring, holy shit, that was a terrible map.
Yeah,
He does this kind of blink all in, and then uh, loses to, I believe, a Reaper distracting him in his base, or
yeah.
he loses. No, that was Catalina,
Okay.
where he goes proxy Oracle into Gateway follow up, and
Mm-hmm.
the single Reaper goes across the map because it's broke.
Yeah.
Uh, so this is like a until this point, and even the series against Byung,
Wasn't that good?
it's yeah, no, it's a very messy tournament where he doesn't play to his skill level, but somehow he still beats people just because he clutches the series.
Yeah, like he kind of like scrabbles his way through, and it's like, oh, thank
Yeah,
God, it's PvP, and then he beats the shit out of Trap.
yeah, and he sort of got overlooked in this tournament as well because in the first round nobody cared about Zest versus Hydra because Innovation versus Life
Yeah.
was the big thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a great series, and Innovation actually beats Life.
Yeah.
And then the other big match was Dark against Staja, where
Uh.
uh, Dark
What?
beats Staja.
Yeah.
Oh, and Flash versus Trap as well. That was also a good series.
Mm-hmm. But basically, like Tasia was
Um,
retired at that point.
he,
Well, actually, that's
no,
not
he
fair to
was
say
retired,
because
but not
like Tasia was
practicing.
basically like not. First off, Tasia was never practicing, so I don't know if that counts.
Yeah,
And second of all, he
he was
retired
semi-retired.
so many times that
Yeah,
he's basically retired like his entire career. So
yeah.
fair enough, right?
And then the next round, Zest versus Innovation and Maru versus Dark are the big
Yeah.
series.
Mm-hmm.
Zest versus Innovation is a messy thing
Yeah.
where Innovation is just dumb essentially and
Hey.
does two SCV pulls that Zest was always very good at holding.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. Basically,
essentially
like
Innovation steams up ramps
yeah.
and loses.
Very weird series generally from
Yeah.
Innovation during those times.
Yeah.
Actually, uh,
Yes.
but yeah, like even though I'm not a guy who thinks like Innovation is like some kind of mastermind, but he definitely usually comes up with better plans than that. So I'm not exactly sure what happened to him that time.
I guess this was what I was talking about, where Innovation is just kind of stubborn and does
Does
his
this thing
thing,
right?
whether it works or not. And this is one of these series where it just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, he chose the worst maps to do it on as well.
Mm-hmm.
He picked Catalina,
Yeah.
where he
Listen, he's no
sims up a
MVP. Like,
two force field.
yeah.
Yeah, where he sims up a two force field ramp,
Uh-huh.
and then he does it again on Expedition Lost.
Yeah. Basically, like, basically it was like the most Marine King series from Innovation
Yeah,
for no apparent reason, I guess. But whatever. It's not like he's my bonjour. Put it that way. Hashtag not my bonjour. So,
yeah,
basically, he's Zest is gonna Zest wins this one, but it's not like his great achievements in 2014. I'll put it that way. Like it doesn't feel like one. He wins the title, but
um,
it's not like it
yeah,
was GSL win or it was like Kespa Cup win. It was like, oh man, this guy was so
yeah.
fucking good. He's gonna dominate the world. This one's like, oh shit, he won it. I don't think he's gonna do it again. Anytime soon, at least. He does it basically,
Yeah,
and then the next
yeah,
time we see him is SSL Season 2 playoffs.
yeah. I think worth noting for Katowice as well is the only competent series he plays, like really, really good series he plays at this tournament, is the finals against Trap,
Yeah,
where again it's PvP and he is just a better player
yeah.
than these two, and it shows.
Yep. Shout outs to Gemini who thinks Trap is still underrated for some reason, even though
He is.
he has like
He is.
4 years of playing history, man. I'm pretty sure if he was underrated, he could have gotten more. If maybe underrated is the wrong term. Maybe he's like I think he is evaluated correctly for the results he got. Like
Perhaps. I think.
I don't think he could have done better with his career if he had rerun it. Basically,
Yeah, maybe.
yeah.
I think he's underrated in terms of
Community like
people
respect.
don't realize when he's good,
Yeah,
and uh, at specific points where Trap, for example, in Katowice, I thought Trap was very, very good.
yeah.
He's one of the
He
best
was pretty
players there.
good there. Yeah, like
Yeah, and people never put him up there even when he's in good form.
yeah. That's fair. That's a fair point. So SSL basically we have Zest walk out of Group A with Maru. He beats Hurricane and Lenok. And I'll go ahead and say these are not impressive wins. Hurricane is like I can't even come up with a word that describes Hurricane accurately for how mediocre he is. Because even like mediocre like overrates how mediocre Hurricane was. And Lenok was basically like been dead since Heart of the Storms began. Like his last funeral was him beating Daniwa at that tournament a million years ago. After that, he's basically been nothing.
Yeah,
So I
I
guess
think
okay, go ahead.
to describe Hurricane, it was always people always said Hurricane was underrated and he was kind of up and coming,
Yeah,
but then he always stayed that way. He never
did anything.
reached the level. So people just kind of realized,
Yeah.
well, maybe he wasn't up and coming. Maybe that's actually his true level. Anyways,
Anyways,
um,
he plays against Stats, his teammate, and then Stats basically like ends Zest's run here. We talked about it a little bit. Basically, Zest has always been pretty bad at these team kill scenarios, and this shows up again here.
yep. Um, Worth noting at this point is that I don't think Zest played poorly in the series.
Yeah.
I think he played well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and at this point in time, Zest is having a bit of a resurgence
Yeah.
where he makes the SSL round of 8 twice
Yeah.
and Code S round of 8 as well.
Yeah. It's basically when you're telling me
Where
like he's gonna come back, he's gonna be the best in the world. Like, no, I don't think so, man. Like, give it up.
maybe not that, but at the time he was one of the best players in the world
Yeah,
for
one of the
sure.
best, but I don't think he was gonna be the best at the time. Like, cause his PVT was so questionable, so suspect. Like,
Sort of,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
And it is what's holding him back in these tournaments.
yeah,
It was the team kill against Stats, and then in GSL he loses to Innovation
yeah,
in the quarterfinals, and then he loses to TY, another
Terran,
team kill,
yeah,
and the Terran in the quarterfinals of SSL.
yeah. So basically, like I said, his TVP was pretty suspect.
Yeah, but worth noting is that in GSL in that season uh, he beats Dark and Solar.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So his PvP is still very good. His PvP is still very, very good.
Yeah,
Then um, in Star League, in his group stage. He
He
beats
beat
Maru
yeah, he
twice,
beat Mara
actually.
twice. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a very surprising result.
yeah, because he at this point he was beginning to figure out how to play against Maru,
Uh huh.
and this actually shows ever since, even in Legacy,
Yeah, basically like he has
Zest
Mara's
beats him
number
a lot. Yeah,
usually.
and Zest was like the one guy who could beat Maru then, because he realized that Maru was sort of susceptible to early game aggression, and
Hmm.
he had to do something early to avoid getting snowballed by Maru.
Yeah.
But then TY beats him.
Yeah, of
So
course. Like I said, he's still
yeah,
suspect in PVT, all things
yeah,
considered,
and in team kills as well. So
and
this
team
is
kills. Yeah,
worst possible draw.
still made it to the Blizzcon finals, but I actually don't remember him making the Blizzcon finals. They must have been. Basically
He
lost the
got killed by
innovation.
innovation.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Nothing impressive there then.
yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to
Played poorly as well.
yeah, played pretty poorly, and then we're gonna go to. You want to talk about Legacy of the Void? Talk about Legacy of the Void.
Yeah, sure.
All right, because
Um,
it's not gonna be
Legacy,
all rainbows here. Because like basically he's like the best in the first month, and then he drops off severely.
mm, not the first
I
month
mean, like
actually.
first season.
Yeah. So Legacy starts off with Sola dominating
Yeah,
the first couple things because he wasn't at BlizzCon and he had more time
to
to play
play.
the
Yeah.
beta and get used to the game.
Hmm.
But by the time Code S comes around, Zest is number one, and it shows in this Code S season,
Yeah.
and even before in Code A,
Hmm.
where he plays a really really sick series against Maru.
Yeah. It's like
Um,
one of the first one of the rare like really good series of that time. I think.
yeah, it was all a bit messy still because people hadn't figured out Legacy.
Yeah.
But in this season, Zest had everything figured out.
Yeah. Zest had all the
Um,
answers before everybody else did.
yeah,
And,
I think Maru at the time was regarded as the best Terran
but he ran into
in
Maru,
Legacy,
ran into Zest and Code
but
A.
yeah, he met Zest in Code A
Yeah.
and got dominated 3-0
Yeah.
with a couple of very good games
Yeah.
by both actually.
Yeah. I don't
Um,
mind saying I think that Maru, even though Ty makes the finals of this, I I I think Maru was still a better player at the time. It's like a really
Perhaps, yeah.
yeah
It's
straight.
very hard to tell
Yeah, hard to
'cause
tell because you don't have the results to back it up. But just what I saw in the game, I thought Maru was a better player. But
yeah.
who knows? Maybe Maru
It's
just got
hard
to
to
the
say
round of four
'cause
and lost again. So
yeah, it's very hard to say because that's the only thing we saw of Maru that
yeah,
season, really.
but it was
Uh,
much higher level
he
games
was
than
just
what
unlucky.
Ty showed me.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, TY was still very good.
Still a very good player, but
Very,
like if I'm comparing the two, I'd have picked Maru.
yeah. So this season is especially notable for. We mentioned that Zest was weak against Terran before,
Yeah.
and in this season, everything turns around.
Yep.
He loses one game to a Terran until he meets TY in the finals,
Yeah.
and he loses two more.
Hmm.
He beats what's that? One, two,
He beats Tasia twice.
three, four. Yeah, that's four Terrans he beats.
Yeah.
Beats Tasia twice.
Of course,
Beats
Tasia's like
Journey.
Tasia's been out of it for like a year. I'm actually surprised
Yeah.
Tasia got to a round of 8 here. Like that's actually disgusting. How did all of
Yeah.
Korea not let?
Retired man.
How did all of Korea like let Tasia get to a round of 8 in GSL? That's disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, Rogue at this point was essentially semi-retired as well. He was
Yeah.
playing, I believe, Overwatch.
Yeah, probably. Like a lot of people were playing Overwatch. Like shout outs to Little Bo, who was going to show us how great he was in Overwatch. Still waiting on that Little Bo.
Yeah. But yeah, Rogue was trash. Journey. To be fair, Journey wasn't a terrible player.
But he
in
wasn't
this Codex.
he wasn't great either. Like
Yeah, he wasn't great either. Funny enough, he's still the only guy who takes a map of Zest before the finals,
yeah.
I believe.
Yeah, still
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Basically, all right. Because this is also a new game, so what do you think about this new game and how it like affected Zest's play? Like, why is that why he's so dominant now? Because I think it's like a big part of it.
Yes, in a way. I think that he that's one of his strengths, I think, is he figures out builds and strategies very quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't really need other people
Figured it out
to
for
help
him.
him, yeah, to figure it out for him.
Yeah, like innovation.
So when this comes around, he has all the answers, and he has everything refined to a point where, if you watch his PVTs this season, it all looks the same,
Yeah.
and it all looks like down to the fourth, fifth base timings, and the builds all look the same, and they all work
Mm-hmm.
just perfectly and kill Terran uh, at like there were like 3 specific timings where he could have beaten Terran
Mm-hmm.
that were just integrated into the build he did. He defended everything easily because he had all the map vision, he had all the answers, he had everything mapped out essentially.
Yeah.
And he just beats everybody.
Yeah. Pretty.
Beats Sue again as well,
Yeah.
who I thought was the second best Zerg at this point. Best being Dark.
Yeah, probably. Dark was still like,
Head and shoulders above everybody
yeah,
else.
and Dark himself was like, not only that, but Dark himself was like dealing with a bunch of, and still is, I guess, dealing with some kind of nerve issues. Like, this.
Yeah, but this is
but,
the season
yeah.
where Dark wins us still. So
yeah, like it's hard to say it that way, but I think even though Dark wins, I still think he's a Kong. Go ahead and say it. I still think he is like a son of Sue, one of the many sons of Sue. Because there's actually a bunch of sons of Sue in StarCraft 2. There's like a Buell also. There's Dream. There's a ton of them.
BL. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, so essentially Zest plays like a flawless season.
Yeah.
Here. This is one of the most impressive Protoss with victories I've seen.
Yeah, in terms of just pure domination, right?
Yeah,
like
pretty much. Because
yeah,
it was only TY who put up a fight,
Mm-hmm.
and even I mean, the game on Dusk Towers was remarkable in that Dusk Towers was the map where Zest had a build
Mm-hmm.
and it worked.
Yeah.
Every single time. And TY actually managed to beat him in this game.
Mm-hmm.
But then Zest took over with good preparation. It's funny because this series is, in a way, the exact opposite of weaknesses he had in the past,
Yeah.
where he was bad against Terran and against teammates.
Mm-hmm.
But in this series, he was well prepared against a Terran teammate.
Yeah.
Essentially, to me, he was the better player than TY,
Yeah.
and deservedly won that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also much better player than Deer,
Yeah.
which showed in the semifinals.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Let's see here. And now we're going to skip ahead because, first off, I'll go ahead and say it if nobody else wants to say it. I think round of 8 is worth less in Legacy of the Void than it was before. Because, especially in Korea, because there's way less players. Just straight up, if you want to count the numbers, there's like close to 200, 300 at the prime of the competitive era. So 2013 to 2015. At this point, you can barely fill out round of 32. So that's just the way I see it. So I don't like. I'll go ahead and skip to like the high points of his career in Legacy of the Void because he gets a few round of 8s, gets one at SSL2, gets one at Kestra Cup, gets one at BlizzCon. Actually, I don't remember that. What did he do here?
BlizzCon?
Yeah, BlizzCon 2016.
That was the end of that year. He was actually quite good then.
Yeah.
But he lost the stats.
Yeah, typical stats. And then stats
Yeah,
lost.
that was
okay.
after he lost to Neeb, I believe, at
Yeah.
Casper Cup.
Yeah, that was after he lost the Kestra Cup at Tanib. Which isn't
Yeah, and then TY.
yeah, which isn't actually that bad considering.
Yeah, Neeb had good PvP.
Yeah, Neeb had very good
But
PV.
it shows in this group that Zest came prepared.
Mm-hmm.
He beat True and then beats Neeb in PvP.
Yeah.
Very impressive series
Mhm.
from him.
Yeah.
And then
He
the
runs.
series against Stats is classic Zest versus teammate.
Yeah.
It's a weird series. They both do weird things. And it ends on Dasan Station.
Yep.
Which, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
it's Dasan Station.
What else you want to say?
Yeah.
What?
I mean, that could have gone either way. And I thought at the time that Zest would have had a much better shot against Beyond in the semis that
Mm-hmm.
Stats had.
Yeah.
And Stats did lose very one-sidedly to Beyond.
Yeah.
I thought that Zest was a much better PvPer than Stats,
Okay.
and perhaps could have stopped again.
Yeah.
So who knows what could have happened? But I thought he was very good at this tournament.
Yep.
Um, just sort of got PvP'd out. Didn't look much worse than Stats.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, just kind of lost the series.
Yep.
Yeah.
Next one we see him at is Home Story Cup 14.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, basically gets to the finals here. Pretty decent showing overall, considering. Basically, he beats TY, I think. He actually beats TY this time. Beats Alive, beats Rogue,
Mm-hmm.
loses to Patience. I still can't
Yeah.
believe Patience is a thing, but okay.
Yeah, that was a fun series though.
Yeah, it was.
This tournament reminded me a lot of IEM Katowice
Mm-hmm.
when he won. It was all very messy series. It didn't feel like he played very well.
Mm-hmm.
Only that this time he barely lost the patience.
Yeah.
In, to be honest, a very entertaining series.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was very fun to watch on PvP.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
And
so we skip that and
now we'll go to the Dark Ages. So, I didn't watch any of his games because he actually didn't make it very far in any of them. Do you have a theory as to why Zest declined? Because apparently Zest doesn't have a fucking theory. He has no idea why he went to trash.
I think I do
Okay.
because um, this is around Casper Cup
Yeah.
is when uh, the the KT house dissolves and he has to live on his own,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's what does the thing.
Yeah. Because he's not
Does the
Life
damage
Ortasia,
to him.
basically.
Yeah, because this is someone who, I mean,
He he grew
we
up in
talk
the
about
entire system.
people like baby TY
Yeah.
uh, starting in Casper houses as a kid, but Zest was one of them as well. Like if you see pictures of him in Brudor, he was very young
Mm-hmm.
and obviously stayed in a team house for a very long time.
Yeah.
And
Institutionalized.
yeah, it was just he had a schedule planned for him. You wake up, you practice. There's food. There's some kind of activity. You practice more. You go to sleep. That's that.
Yep.
And to him, I think the switch to a regular life was very tough to handle.
Yeah. Okay. So you think
It
it's like a
still is to this day, I
yeah.
think.
So you think it's a personal problem rather than anything strategic or tactical?
Yeah, I think
Because I'll go ahead and say it, like Neeb basically corroborated this. Like there are a bunch of like personal problems a bunch of Kespa players were having in 2016 because everybody knew Kespa was shutting down StarCraft 2, so a lot of them didn't know what they were going to do at that point. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was like the reason Zest struggled so much, because maybe he's thinking in his mind like maybe I should just quit this entire time like in all of 2017 and go do something
yeah,
else, go be a model or whatever, right?
yeah. The funny thing with him is though that throughout a lot of this period, essentially until now, I would say,
Yeah.
um, he always had. Uh, it was never that he was terrible.
Okay.
He was terrible in offline matches.
Yeah.
Um, but he does win 2 Home Story Cups in a row.
They're like an
Um,
year apart, man.
yeah, but it does show that he can beat good people. He beats GSL champion Gumiho,
Yeah.
and then he beats Beyond in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
So he does have these moments, and if you follow him closely, he during a lot of this time he's actually for months. We talk about Rogue and the signs sort of being there for Rogue winning tournaments when he dominated the ladder.
Yeah.
Um, but worth noting was that Rogue, in an interview in GSL, actually said that a day before he won a group, he met Zest on ladder like 15 times
Mm-hmm.
and lost all 15 games because Zest was actually above Rogue on the ladder,
Yeah.
and you would have backed him to do well in tournaments as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he showed that in online tournaments too. Like he won a ton of them, the Wardy Cups, the Olima Leagues, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He did extremely well in them and played super good games. But then he showed up and was awful in offline matches, and I have no idea
You have no
what
idea how he
caused it.
became such a GSL
No,
champion into an onliner, basically.
I have no idea how a GSL champion sort of loses his mojo in offline matches, and
Because it's not like he had 5 slip
I
disc,
have no
right?
answer still because this isn't over.
Yeah. Because the
It's not over
question
still.
isn't over. Because this is actually the next arc, basically.
Yeah,
Because you know,
we can end the video on this because it's an open end. Zest still has the same problems. He goes to IEM Katowice last month
yeah,
and
loses to a
loses.
laser. Yeah, and then he
Yeah,
goes to GSL, loses again to the boy Dark,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, fair enough. Dark is a great player, but
Yeah. But I will. You know what?
yeah,
I will say this. I will say this for Zest. You did your job in GSL because what happened was Innovation got the best group he could have ever hoped for. His entire fucking article about how he basically masterminded the perfect group for himself to get out of GSL round of 16. Still lost. Thank you, Zest. Not my bonjour, but basically, I actually thought because I'm not like you. I'm not actually gonna go up to all these online games and like yeah, I like Zest, but I'm not gonna go watch all online games and then watch him trash a bunch of these offline like lands because that's basically what it's been doing for like last year. But I actually started to believe a little bit. It's like, oh, he won Home Story Cup. Okay, it's not bad. Does well in GSL, not bad. Then trashes IEM, and now trashes GSL. And I'm like, should I really believe in this guy? So this is the final question, I suppose. Do you believe in Zest still? Like, do you think like, and what I mean by believe is, do you think this guy still has what it takes to be a champion? Because I think that's always going to be the level you have to ask for Zest.
it depends on
The meta.
what sort of championship we're talking about.
Okay.
It
He's
could
in
be
He's in Korea, so it has to be GSL.
right. I think he's got like home story cups he has in him
Yeah,
because he won the last one
he won the last one pretty easily.
4 months
Yeah,
ago or so,
yeah.
and he played great in this.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched him play, I think 4 or 5 online tournaments over the last 2 weeks, and he won all of them.
Yeah.
And he beat good Zergs, he beat good players, because it's not that online tournaments only have these terrible players.
No, like everybody plays them
No,
now because they all need money.
everybody plays them because they all need the money. And Zest beats everybody.
Yeah.
He 3-0'd Hero, he 3-0'd Impact, who actually is a very good player right now.
I'll never believe that, but okay, keep going.
No, he is. He's a good player now.
Okay.
And he beats a bunch of good people and makes it look easy. It all depends on the next couple tournaments. I'm not sure. I think
Because, all right, here's the thing: is like
the weird thing to me is that the last couple of years he hasn't been able to translate that online form to tournaments.
yeah,
Other than Home Story Cup for some reason.
yeah.
Maybe it's alcohol. Or
Maybe
it's
he needs
everybody
maybe
else
he needs to
getting
pull a
drunk.
fruit dealer, get drunk before his GSL
Yeah.
games.
I don't know. But if he can do that again, I think, yeah, he can win tournaments again.
Okay.
And in Korea as well. Because if you watch him play online and on ladder and everything, he's not worse than any of the best players. But it's all up to whether he can do that in tournaments again. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
Currently,
basically,
it isn't looking like it. But
yeah, basically he has somehow turned into an onliner, right?
yeah,
And somehow he needs to learn how to play on LAN. Basically, there was this. I keep going back to this, but there was this one player, greatest of all time. His name is MVP. He was able to do it despite all these circumstances. I'm just saying he should probably pay MVP a visit and ask him directly because apparently MVP still talk. You can still talk to him in Korea. Just ask him how the fuck he did it because, like, ignoring all these snide jokes, straight up, like MVP is the best when it comes to showing up there has ever been, relative to every outside circumstance he could possibly give him, right?
yeah.
So
Didn't he have some kind of handicap?
yeah, 5 slip disc, right? Also Broodlord Fester, also his worst matchups, also jet lag, also technical issues. Shout outs to Innovation losing to Tasia at BlizzCon. A bunch of these other different like problems. And he somehow still showed up. So I'm just saying, like, just ask him. It's not like he's competing himself anymore. Maybe he'll give you some secret juice. I don't know, but
Mhm.
uh, I guess we'll end it
I
here.
think,
Go ahead.
yeah, I think the current situation for Zest is this, that he can beat everybody in PvP and he can beat everybody in PvT. Um, as he showed in GSL actually.
Yeah, basically
Um,
did.
the series against Innovation was very good. He played really, really
Yeah,
well.
he
And
really outclassed Innovation there.
yeah, and in Katowice as well, he beat a bunch of good to decent Terrans uh, in the open bracket.
Yeah. I actually
He,
don't think his PVZ is that great, but that's mostly because of the meta.
and his PvC is terrible,
Yeah.
or was terrible before I watched the last couple online tournaments where it was actually very good.
Okay.
But yes, I do believe that Protoss is shit against Zerg, and that is a big part of why Zest is bad in
Yeah.
matchup.
I actually do agree. This is like one of the rare times. This isn't like that random ass time where you're like, where you told me, fuck, Zest did everything right against Mario. We should have won this game. And I look it up, I was like, oh, let's see here. Oh, he dropped a Widow Mine. What's Zest gonna? Oh, Zest actually just does nothing and loses 20 probes. Okay, yeah, did everything. No, this is actually one of those times where, yeah, I agree with you. I actually think Zerg is ridiculously overpowered against Protoss. I don't know why nobody cares about this. But whatever. Maybe it's just like a racism thing against Protoss. That's always been there, an undercurrent
Yes,
throughout StarCraft 2
yes.
history. Thank you, Idra. I believe it starts with Idra and ends with Idra. But
It's also the Blink era was very, very bad
yeah,
for Protoss.
like I get,
I mean, it was every Protoss won a tournament, so in terms of prize money, it was great for them.
yeah,
But in terms of standing in the community and respect from everybody else, it was terrible
yeah,
because ever since then, everybody hates Protoss.
yeah. Basically, I'll put it
Uh,
this way: is here's what happened with Zerg with Broodlord Fester was after that era happened, no Zerg ever really complained because they all realized, man, we got so much from Broodlord and Fester. We'd look like a bunch of assholes if we complained. Shout outs to Life for complaining about Zerg imbalance. But basically, like for whatever reason, people don't balance the game in terms of balance or design. Like they're balancing it in terms of like community reaction or vindication. It feels like. So it feels like you're like you ever there's like this famous webcomic where basically it kind of describes how League of Legends, Dota 2, and StarCraft 2 balance the game. And like League of Legends, they have like two guys fighting with toothpicks, and then in Dota 2 you have two guys fighting with like big ass giant swords, and then in StarCraft 2 you have one guy with a sword, and then he's like, oh, it's somebody else's turn to have the big ass giant sword, right? So basically, that's what's happening
can you
in.
link to this?
I'll look it up. I'll look it up and I'll link
Yeah,
it to you. It's
'cause
pretty.
that sounds great.
It's pretty funny, but basically, that's the perfect description of what's happened in StarCraft 2 balance, and it hasn't changed. I don't know why. Like, it's because David Kim's gone, guys. You don't have to do what David Kim did, but apparently it's still the same. Still the same
I mean,
problems.
maybe he was just a face and didn't make all the decisions,
No, man, I
and they
talked to that
just
guy.
scapegoated him
I talked to
for.
that guy. He actually had a very similar mentality. Let's just say it that way. The NDA is coming up in 4 months. See you then.
Oh, oh yeah, I'm gonna watch this.
um,
Uh, so yeah, on Zest, final thought
yeah.
is that PvC is getting patched in, I believe, either today or tomorrow.
Okay.
I don't know. Like very soon at least.
Yeah.
Uh, which will help address some of the issues he has in the matchup, which is he is terrible against early game Zerg all-in kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
as every other Protoss is.
Yeah.
And his other two matchups are at the level where I believe he can beat everybody.
Okay.
So if he can get PvC to that level, I don't see why he should be contending for
Right.
tournaments again.
So basically, assuming he gets PVZ back and assuming his form stays, the only real question is if he can translate that to on LAN. And at least
Yep.
if this GSL it shows like he can. So you think he's a good prospect for a championship this year?
I don't want to lean out the window that far, but
Hey man, you
I
gotta go for it. Gotta go for it. Like, what do you think? Because I've been saying
this
that.
year no.
Like, I'm making predictions all the time, basically.
This year no. I think he'll qualify for the next season,
'Cause-
and I think
Okay.
he's he's got the quality to reach the playoffs again,
Okay.
and then if he fixes his PVC, he can do it. If
Okay.
he gets a good bracket, he can do it.
Think about it this way, man. In the finals,
Uh,
he's almost certainly going to play against Sue. Doesn't matter what GSL it is. Sue is somehow going to get there. And then at that point,
well
it's
then,
easy,
yeah,
right? Isn't it? At that point, it's pretty
yes,
easy.
sure,
Like, everybody can
yeah,
beat Sue in the finals. The only person who can't
yeah,
beat Sue is
of
Sue.
course.
Um, but
But yeah, how many GSLs are there left this year? Two?
this is the first season, isn't it? So there should be two
Yeah,
more. That's my
okay,
yeah, and
right. But there's no. Is there Star League or not?
I don't know.
I don't think there
I don't
is.
think there is. I can check, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I doubt it as well. Um, so he would
There's
have to win one of
there's a super tournament, but I don't think a super tournament actually fits him
right
that
super
well.
tournament. Um, well, I count super tournament. If he wins a super tournament,
Yeah.
I count that
Okay, so
full
because
tournament going to win.
there's two super tournaments, so maybe he
Right,
could
so we'd
win
have
one of
to
those.
yeah, or maybe if there's another global tournament coming up
That's
for
pretty
some reason.
doubtful, but maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Uh,
So I'm gonna say no. I don't think he wins the tournament this year.
okay.
Maybe he wins a Homestar Cup.
All right. And then I guess
This,
all right, maybe he'll win a Home Story Cup, but that's not quite the same as the question I'm asking is if he'll win one of these
yeah,
big ones, right?
yeah. I'm
So
gonna say no, but I think he makes the playoffs.
okay, again, maybe round four, and if he somehow gets to the finals against Sue, he can win there.
Yeah, he can win again. Yeah.
But I mean, who wouldn't you favor against Sue in the finals? That's the real question.
Foreign Zerg player. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, basically like Scarlet and Jaedong all over again. Like that's how Jaedong won his broke his Conquers. He played Scarlet in the finals. That's how he did it, guys. Think about that. Um. Yeah. So basically, my final question is, because this is the same question I asked for about Hero is, what do you think is his legacy so far, considering that his story has not quite ended yet?
Mm. That's hard to say. I think if you'd asked me a year ago or so,
Mm-hmm.
before this whole period of
Resurgence.
muddiness and mediocrity
Yeah.
began, I would have said he is the best Protoss in history
Yeah.
because when Protoss, not Protoss, when the game was at its peak in
He
2014
was the
and
best.
2015, he was the best
Yeah.
for the longest time,
Mm-hmm.
and he was not just the best Protoss, but the best player in the world.
Yeah.
Uh, he did things in the matchup that were so much more intelligent than everybody else. He has such incredible understanding of the game.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the builds that Protoss do nowadays, like for example, I believe the current standard PvZ build, the
Yeah.
Stargate into Archon drop, is his build.
Yeah.
Um, the one of the standard, like the two standard PvT builds at the moment,
They're both his.
the blink into charge double forge
Mm-hmm.
mass gateway is his, and then the phoenix into charge is his. So he does a ton of like a lot of how the race plays sort of comes back to Zest,
Yeah.
and his prime, his peak, everything, dominance, quality across all different matchups. I don't think I've ever seen anyone as good as Zest overall.
In terms of
So
Protoss.
in terms of Protoss, yeah,
Okay.
I would put him up there. He's got I mean, he's the record holder for Protoss GSLs as well.
Yeah.
MC has two, Zest has two, but then Zest also has that. We're not sure whether or not it counts.
The GSL Global. You
Global
may as well count it.
Championship.
You may as well count it.
Yeah.
Even if you don't want to, it's like still.
And that,
Even if you don't want to, here's the thing: it's like it's not like MC has another one that's as good as that,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And he also has. I mean, he's Katowice, despite that not being the greatest tournament round, it's still a world championship.
Yeah, it's still very good.
And he also won that weird GSL balance patch.
I'm not counting that, man. Come on, that's stretching.
Yeah, I'm not counting it too, but that was he actually played very well.
Okay.
I'm not counting it then. But yeah, I think he's the best Protoss.
there ever was.
To me, at least.
Yeah.
It's between him, MC, and perhaps SOS. But
Really, SOS?
SOS, yeah, I mean, he won 2 BlizzCons. But
I'll take Rain over SOS. I will take Rain over SOS.
Rain lacks the results, I think, a little bit.
But
Just a little.
SOS lacks consistency. You got 2 BlizzCons.
Yes,
Where was
yeah.
you the rest of those
Yep.
years?
Yep.
Like
That's what
straight up, I actually think
speaks against SOS.
straight up, I actually think Classic is better than SOS too.
Argument to be made for that.
Right.
Yes. So essentially MC and Zest, and I think MC just laid the groundwork for a lot of things.
Like
But-
MC, like basically did like the individual understanding of the unit interactions, like specifically
Yeah,
the force field, which is like very important, but also Blink
Yeah.
Stalker, how that works with the Zealot, how that works with the Immortal, how that works with the Sentry, basically.
But it's hard to say. I thought MC had fallen off. MC fell off very early and then sort of kept himself relevant for a long time.
Yeah,
Whereas Zest,
Zest peaked
Dominated.
and then he fell off like super hard though. Right?
Yep.
He fell off super
He did.
hard. Basically it for MC to fall off that hard, it actually took him like 2 years.
Yeah, but-
Maybe 2.5.
yeah, but even before that, he wasn't like a dominating player.
Yeah.
He just MC sort of won small-ish tournaments.
He won smallest
Like,
tournaments.
he won his GSL.
he was like an
and then
upset
he won
player.
Smallish tournaments.
He was an upset player for sure. Right?
Yeah, but also the tournaments he won after that were
Well,
sort of
We're never that big.
weak, I thought.
They're like tier 2,
Never
tier
that
3.
big.
Right?
Yeah.
Basically, like he's
Whereas-
good for a while, but all right. Actually, this is a point like I never brought up, but it's actually something somebody told me. Is from a former CS 1.6 player. He basically said this. He said, while it's great and all to have like a very long career where you're good for a long period of time with occasional peaks. He said it was much harder, in his opinion, to have like a consistent peak of dominance. So basically, what Zest, because if you think about Zest, think about his 2014 to maybe the beginning of 2015, depends how far you want to stretch it. But basically, for that year, he is the best player, and that is the most dominant year anybody has had. If you're talking about the entire year, and then like it's arguably the second most dominant peak anybody has had outside of life. At the end of 2014 to the beginning of 2015, which I think the strongest peak dominance anybody has ever had.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, even running down the statistics on 2014 for Zest, he won 3 Korean tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
And in every tournament he entered, except for BlizzCon, he made it to at least the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
So that's insane.
Yeah. So
I don't think any Protoss ever did anything
Yeah.
terrible.
So basically, the point I'm getting at there is like MC. Maybe you can argue for longevity, but I feel like longevity, it's an important asset, it's an important achievement, but it's not the one that's going to define you as the greatest of all time necessarily. Not unless you're doing something like MVP, where even when you fall off, you get into like 2 GSL finals, like something ridiculous like that, right? And like MC, yeah, he had longevity, but he was like basically a round of 8 player to like round 16 player for like a majority of the time after he fell off.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
and that's not that much better than like Zest straight up bombing. Like, that's also why Parting didn't make my initial list, even though he had like the longest round of 8 like run anybody had ever had, because it doesn't feel as impressive as like the peak of like what Mario did was like 6 or 7 semifinals in a row or something, right? Something like that isn't as impressive. So I actually don't think it's like an argument. I'm pretty certain Zest wins it out at this point. I think he is the best, and I think in terms of game management, he's probably the best Protoss has ever seen. It's arguable with him and Rain on specific like metas and specific things, but he's definitely like top 2 for sure, in my opinion. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's something else. Yeah, because even though MC, as you said, figured out a lot of the
Interactions.
a lot of timings and unit interactions, you can't even hold that against Zest, because he brought a ton of build variety to PvP, for
Mm-hmm.
example. He showed essentially what Zest did for all of 2014 became standard
Yeah.
Protoss play.
Yeah.
And
He wrote the playbook.
so, yeah, he wrote how Protoss was supposed to play. You watched Zest and
Mm-hmm.
you couldn't replicate him, but you still tried to.
Mm-hmm.
And
Like the only playbook he
some
didn't
of
write was
these
SOS's
influence.
playbook.
Yeah, he doesn't play by anyone's playbook. He just does his own thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, if so, as far as influence on the metagame and
I
revolutionizing
think for certain like
how
Zest definitely
the race.
outplaces MC, and then I still think there's a question of Rain a little bit because definitely like Rain brings like completely different mentality to the game, and he
Yeah,
himself did bring up a shitload of builds. So
yeah. I think the only thing that Rain lacks is the results
yeah,
to back it all up, because Rain never won a GSL. No,
he
he
he,
won a
he
GSL,
did he
but
did
he
after
won a rather weak GSL.
still won though.
Uh, yeah, he won
Yeah,
it.
still won,
That's true.
and
But Zest beats him in that regard.
he won a super hard
I would
GSL.
say, yeah, I would say Zest beats him on innovation of the Protoss race overall,
Mm-hmm.
which is hard to say because Rain was one of the biggest
Like
innovators
I
of
said, it's like
Protoss as well.
that's very iffy, right?
Mm,
Like I can go
yeah,
either way on that one. With like there are arguments to be made for both Zest and Raid as to like who was the most important player to the Protoss existence, right? Because
yeah. Case, I think,
it has to come to one of them.
yeah, I think they're extremely even in everything except Zest has more results.
I actually think Zest's peak is better, so that's why I give it to Zest.
Yeah,
Cause like,
yeah,
but here's the thing: is like in my system though, I don't really count Pro League because like I think Pro League is its own little thing. But if you do count
yeah.
it, then it becomes much more muddied because I think Rain was a better Pro League player.
Mm,
Like barely, but he was.
I don't remember quite how well
Zest
Rain
was.
did. I remember
Uh,
no, Zest was always quite good in Pro League,
like basically like Rain
but
dominant. Rain was super dominant for like the few years he played for SK2 before he quit. That's my
yeah,
that's my impression.
Rain was good.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
but yeah,
Rain had
basically
Rain
like
had this
Rain
peak in Pro League
lacks.
where
Yeah.
he carried them through the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
but then Zest also had a season in Pro League where he went 13-0.
Yeah.
So they're all they're both very even.
Yeah.
Actually, I agree. I may have underestimated Rain a little, but I think
Yeah.
still
Like I said, Rain is
Zest
definitely way
on
above
pure results.
SOS. Just putting it out there, my opinion. But I definitely think like SOS is super overrated for what he does in big game clutch moments. Now, if he had won that GSL, maybe I would have changed my tune. But he did it. Instead, he lost to Beyond. And he lost to Beyond when he had a better matchup. I'm just pointing it out there. Is he truly the most clutch player of all time if he can't win a Game 7 in his worst matchup after he fails the cheese like MVP did? I don't think so. Just throwing it out there. Of course, I probably shouldn't end on a fucking MVP note. So back to Zest.
Don't you always? Um, yeah. So Zest to me probably the best Brothers of all time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And like I said, his story still isn't over. He could still win out this year.
yeah,
Like, there's still hope for him, right?
yeah, definitely. Just the fact that he's stuck around for this long. Um, if he was gonna quit, I think he would have quit by now.
I think he would have quit last year if he was gonna quit.
Yeah, and in a lot of the, for example, the Pyeongchang and Katowice, the videos they shot of him, the interviews he did,
Mm-hmm.
he says he's now working very hard again and trying to fix the flaws that he sees in his play. So you can hear some motivation from that. As long as he has that, I think you can never count him out of making a comeback and winning
Okay.
even a GSL again.
All right. So that ends it for this video. See you guys later.